Hi, I'm Richard. I'm a high schooler and I'm really into philosophy, psychoanalysis, general systems theory, and the natural world.
So I'm Maxon, and I'm interested in philosophy, existentialism, music, poetry, arts.
And I think that a lot of the subjects that we're both interested in apart from philosophy come into philosophy, or at
Oh
least
yeah,
are
definitely.
correlated to philosophy. And, regularly, like, even when talking about music or something, some other subject like nature, or
Yeah,
it all comes, I think, back down to a philosophical conversation. And
yeah. I
with
mean,
these,
like
yeah, you can keep going.
the poetry I write. I kind of call it like philosophical poetry because I don't really know what category it goes into. But yeah, I definitely write it to like express a lot of philosophy. And then even the music that, sometimes I write or play, it kind of uh, echoes kind of like what philosophy would sound like. I think
Yeah,
is a pretty way of saying.
yeah, it all definitely comes back to philosophy. And with these kind of other excursions that we may participate in, we again end up having these kind of philosophical discussions. And I think that's the main reason that we're really starting this podcast. It's to kind of expand those philosophical discussions to better understand certain texts, because I think that learning is a central process in understanding philosophy. Really, it's
Yeah,
all learning.
it,
It's
it's
philosophy is a learning
yeah.
process.
Philosophy is really just about learning, and that's why we're starting this channel to have like a collective discourse on it. Like a discourse between us, a discourse between us and our audiences. You know, no one here knows, everything about philosophy, but the whole point of philosophy is, being, we're all getting more educated by the minute in philosophy by just talking to each other. Because really, at the root of philosophy, that's what it's about.
Yeah, exactly. And also, what adds to it is that a lot of these texts in philosophy have a whole lot of different interpretations. A
Yeah,
Nietzsche would be a prime example of a figure that has been interpreted in every single direction, basically. And
yeah.
I think
Bas
that. Or you were saying something?
yeah, like all over, basically, he's really interpreted differently, like from Nazis to anarchists to communists.
Yeah,
It's and pretty much every philosopher is like that. There's different interpretations on who you listen to. You know,
yeah, and I think that's the. But I think that the not in a sense of writing in a vague way, but more so in a
yeah,
way that allows for the different interpretations to come into being. I think that that's really the
yeah,
central, I think, point of philosophy. Philosophy is in itself not like math, not or science, in the sense that it's completely dogmatic. Philosophy is a very, I think, abstract thing, and it's a consistent, again, learning process.
yeah. I mean, the whole like one of the biggest truths in philosophy is that I mean, in a lot of mainstream philosophy, and something that I've kind of discovered myself is that there's no real truths, and that you know pretty much everything is up to interpretation.
Yeah, it's
It's
exactly
not
what
like,
Nietzsche said. Yeah.
yeah, he did say that all things are interpretations.
Yeah. So, and again, that brings us back to this channel. A lot of different interpretations, and our goal again is to learn through, not only with us but with you guys too. We really want you guys to comment what you think about our interpretations, and maybe write down what you think of the text or the person that we're talking, or the idea that we're referring to. So we really just want kind of this group atmosphere. And I think that's not
Yeah,
only the point of a podcast, but again, philosophy in general. But in regard to specific types of philosophy, me and Maxon differ, but I'm mostly into contemporary French thought uh, right now, and as well as I mean, we both like existentialism, but that's really I, I'm
Yeah.
also um, decently into phenomenology. But yeah, that's the areas that I'm mostly versed in.
Really, we're both into like all philosophy. We're both into like philosophy in general. You know, there's a lot to learn, a lot to read, a lot to study. Personally, for me, my favorite philosophy is like existentialism, and also Nietzschean, if some people categorize that as its own category. But Nietzschean and Nietzsche-esque philosophy, Nietzsche is my favorite philosopher, and yeah.
Yeah,
So
Nietzsche's. Oh no, sorry. You can keep going.
no, it's okay.
Yeah, what I was gonna say was, yeah, Nietzsche's an amazing philosopher. He's definitely personally in my, I would say, definitely in my top five, or definitely in my top 10 favorite philosophers I've ever read. Maybe in my top five. I'm not exactly sure. But personally, my favorite philosopher is Gilles Deleuze. I don't think
Yeah, he's
pers. What were you gonna say?
no.
Oh yeah.
I say yeah,
Uh, Personally, I mean, he writes. I mean, he has a general, I think, philosophy about becoming, and not to use his exact term because what he did use this term, abstract machines. I think that that describes his general philosophy. Though he does talk about metaphysics to a decent amount, but his overall um, philosophy I really admire, especially, and this is my favorite book of all time, like in my opinion, everything except the book that came, or that's in the same series, kind of pales in comparison. My favorite book is Anti-Oedipus. I think that it's a very revolutionary text that really, was ahead of its time in the way that it preceded, um, I think, a lot of complete abstract, um, and liberating forces. Like I think the way that Deleuze and Guattari viewed schizophrenia and capitalism and desire, I think that that's a really revolutionary way to look at things, and I think that it's honestly kind of this futuristic path that we should take, at least. Yeah.
yeah. Definitely, the Anti-Oedipus is definitely a revolutionary text, and so personally, I think the best philosophy book I've ever read. It's a hard question. I don't know if I have an answer, but one of the best ones I ever read was Twilight of the Idols by Friedrich Nietzsche. And I mean, I love that book because I feel like it's so grand and it's such a amazing summary of pretty much everything in Nietzsche's philosophy, which he intended it to be. And it's also this kind of grand attack. I mean, in the introduction to the book, Nietzsche declares it as a grand declaration of war on Christianity and Jesus Christ and uh, pretty much all of the enemies of his philosophy and his contemporaries as well. And I think that every sentence and word in that page, which this is really something that is common throughout all of Nietzsche, every single word is packed with meaning. Every word is meant to be on that page, and there's so much to dissect in every sentence, especially in that book. And
Yeah.
I really admire Nietzsche's philosophy. Uh, you know, he's famous for like the Übermensch and stuff, which I do heavily admire that. I really admire his amor fati philosophy and his Dionysian traits, kind of. And yeah, those, obviously we will expand on those later in the channel. But yeah,
Yeah. And actually, our first, and regarding Nietzsche, one of the first series that we plan on doing is about Nietzsche, and we actually also plan on doing a series, especially on Thus Spoke Zarathustra, because we both.
yeah,
It's a very, I mean, it's a not only is it pretty dense, but it's also the philosophical concepts I think expressed in that book um, are, well, it's a culmination of Nietzsche's thought, of course, but it's quite possibly, I think, I think we can both agree that it's one of the best books that we've both ever looked into.
Yeah, I mean, the Spoke Zarathustra is basically the magnum opus of Nietzsche's work, and that's what he intended it to be, which is amazing considering like he wrote it over 12 days, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Nietzsche was, I think we can again agree that Nietzsche was an incredible writer, and I completely agree with what Maxim said about that every single sentence and word is packed with meaning. And I think that that's something that sets Nietzsche from a lot of other philosophers that kind of meander around the point. Even to an extent, even though
Yeah,
I'm like Deleuze's biggest fan, Deleuze is, especially in A Thousand Plateaus, is pretty repetitive. So someone like Nietzsche, I think that's a central difference. Even though
yeah,
Deleuze was a,
that
yeah,
that's something I've never really like had a problem with in Nietzsche. Is like he's not really repetitive. He's always like really original.
yeah.
It's it's pretty. I mean, as a philosopher, as if you're like a philosopher, that can be hard, like writing to make everything original.
It can definitely be hard, and it's even harder thinking that Nietzsche, like, did wasn't really necessarily a person that was like, um, completely like I mean, had the huge life experience, right? Because didn't he, for a decent period of his life, just walk around and write?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of his philosophy. He once said, I am not going to get the direct quote right, but he once said that the greatest ideas come from walking, and that was part of his daily schedule. Just he would just go on walks, and then he would come home and he would write all day. Like, I mean, that's how he wrote most of his books in the span of like a week.
yeah.
But yeah, I deeply admire that because walking is a big part of my life, and it's just definitely a big part of how I think. And like, it's time for me to kind of think about things deeper.
For sure, man. Especially walking at like in the later times of the day, in the evening or at the night with music on. It's a very,
Yeah,
I suppose, introspective, and really, I think it allows you, to use Timothy Leary's terms, it allows you to access new reality tunnels and new stratas of thought. Um, and that
yeah,
goes for a lot of things. And we also, I think, would like to talk about, in regards to new stratas of thought and new ways of thinking. I think meditation is a great way, in regards to clearing your mind. It allows you to not only look at yourself differently, but the world differently. I think that we're definitely going to talk a lot about that. Um,
yeah,
and yeah,
yeah. Meditation is something I've done. Um, I've kind of, I would say I'm a little well versed in like Hindu philosophy. I've I've read like the big texts like the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, and uh, a couple of the Vedas. And I've kind of meditated before, and so that's definitely something we can talk about. Is like how that philosophy uh, explains the world and people, and we can also talk about how it relates to Western philosophical tradition.
yeah, exactly. And bringing it back to Nietzsche, with the eternal reoccurrence, we can definitely, in talking about that idea, I think we definitely touch on a lot of Eastern philosophical, thought.
Yeah, Nietzsche definitely touches on Eastern philosophy a lot, and a lot of philosophers do. I mean, not just Nietzsche, uh, and of course the Eastern philosophers themselves. So we have a lot of stuff we can talk about on this podcast and on this channel in general. Really, this channel is going to be, you know, devoted to like everything. about philosophy.
Yeah, we will do multiple, I mean, many series, and we also plan on doing lectures on specific topics. Like, I'm planning on doing a lecture. I know there's a lot of videos about it, but I think a lot of the videos that I've seen are pretty contradictory. But I
Yeah,
plan on doing a video explaining what Jacques Lacan means by the symbolic, the imaginary, and the real, as well as some other Lacanian concepts. And
yeah,
of course, I'll explain Deleuze and some stuff like that. But
yeah.
yeah, so we have a lot of plans for this channel, and we really hope you guys enjoy our content. And thanks so much for watching and listening. We
Thank you.
really appreciate it. Take care.